And now we present to you Thac0 with Advantage.
Welcome to Thac0 with Advantage. We're two friends that have been playing D&D a long time. While we both love lots of other RPGs, D&D convinces us that if we get high enough level, we'll start attracting followers. Hi, I'm Ange, and I have made so many low-level characters that I never knew the joy of dropping a fireball on your enemies until I started playing video games. But I still love RPGs. So much that I write for and run Gnome Stew, and I also do the Gnomecast.
I'm Jared, and I just realized I've now been running D&D 5e longer than any other edition of D&D. I made it 7 years into AD&D 2nd edition, and if you add 3rd edition, 3.5, and Pathfinder, it's still only 8 years of 3e SRD games. So that's a whole decade without significant burnout from one game system, which is pretty impressive. Oh yeah, I have stuff at whatdoiknowjr.com and Gnomes do. After we look at the games we're running in the campaign journal, we'll be talking about that sweet spot in character levels 5th through 11th level. Then we'll have some recommendations of D&D related content for you to check out in our downtime research segment.
Now stand by for station identification. This is WD&D the Role Player. Now we're going to Mac McKinney and the Morning Game with Wolfman.
In earlier editions of D&D, by the time you reached 9th to 11th level, it was time for you to build some kind of house for yourself, attract some followers, and sink a whole lot of gold into your stronghold, maybe collecting taxes from the locals. Good old feudalism right in here. You like feudalism, Wolfman? Can't be any worse than late-stage capitalism. Well, I guess it is sort of the same, but with less protection for the people. Oh, moving on. The AD&D 2nd edition sourcebook Skills and Powers introduced something that changed this paradigm. When you were custom building the features you wanted for your class, you had the option of gaining extra points by giving up your ability to build a fortress and attract followers. Oh no. They gave the players the power too. That's right, Wolfman. Skills and Powers is one of the earliest examples of an RPG letting you give up something you didn't actually care about to get more abilities than you would otherwise have. Give up your ability to be a landlord and bump your hit die up to D12. The min-maxer power gamer comes forth to rule by way of cheese.
Let me just finish up this campaign journal.
Since last episode, I have run Victoriana Dreadful Inquiries, and I played City of Cowls twice. With Victoriana, they wrapped up the first mystery, A Furious Imposition. I won't talk too much about it because I don't want to really give any spoilers, because this is going to be released to the backers soon, and then hopefully the book will end up shipping and then be available for purchase outside of the Kickstarter and all that. The last session, we had been missing 2 players, so when I started the second session, it was basically, the beginning was kind of a recap, getting the other 2 caught up, because, like, they were still right there at the murder scene, so they could go through and show them and just, like, summarize all the clues they found. Now, Jared and I helped playtest this adventure, so it was interesting seeing the similar or different choices my players made. In the end, they followed almost the exact same path, though they were a little smarter than we were and didn't spend a great deal of time in the sewers trying to follow a track that was going to lead not where we wanted it to. In the end, they faced down the horrifying big bad and saved the day and were able to advance to 2nd level. Yay! We play again this coming Sunday, where I will be basically doing some in-between downtime stuff, some character stuff, and then hopefully starting the next big adventure, Diabolus Ex Machina. With the Saturday game, we knew that we were going to be down a player for the old Margrave game on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So we decided to play City of Cowls in person on that day, meaning we were going to get 3 weeks in a row of the same game, which has not happened in years. In the first session of this 2-session Wonderland, we had arrived on the risen shores of the sunken city Tuatha. The city had been sunk well over 1,000 years ago, around the time of the fall of the Tiefling Empire. It was creepy and dark, and it had signs of sea life that it had once been home to. The first stop was the gate to the city. It was guarded by a tiefling wizard and some fiendish legates. And I have to pause to point out that even the other players were struggling with the difference between demons and devils, because it's an important facet of this whole storyline and what's going on. And it should be noted that the things guarding the gate were devils, not demons. Anyway, we took them out, and as we made our way to the gate, it opened automatically for Anu, who is the reincarnated soul of the first emperor of the Tiefling Empire. And basically, the person who sold their souls to Asmodeus to save their people. It's a big aspect of the setting and all of that. But we made our way through the gate into this very weird city that has just recently risen from the sea. It's risen long enough ago that it's not like still moist, but it still like shows signs of sea life and all of that. Now we had a couple of different areas we could check out because basically we are here to find a sword that can kill Asmodeus, and we were told it would be in the Black Vault, but we had no idea where the Black Vault was. So we ended up heading towards an area that had kind of a red glow to it. We found a number of wizards conducting a ritual over the unearthed giant skeleton of a dead angel. They wore the robes of the cult of Asmodeus. We attacked. They're the jerks behind all this bad stuff, so let's get this party started. Now, having a 14th level fight with a bunch of wizards was interesting. They were powerful, but also squishy. Alaric made a couple of them very sad because he cast silence on himself and then went to deal with them the old-fashioned way, with a sword. Anu tried talking to one of them, and he ended up telling her she didn't understand. And when she tried to get him to explain further, he just tried to kill her. At which point, me, as Dove, commented, "Of course he's trying to kill you. You're a woman, and you didn't immediately listen to what he said. It's mansplaining with magic." The Archmage in charge of the whole ritual cast Time Stop, which was a first for us in this campaign. It's probably a first for me in all of my playing D&D. I'd never actually seen this spell come out. He got 3 turns without us getting to act, but it still wasn't enough because he ended up teleporting away and leaving the surviving wizards behind, of which there ended up being only one who I told surrender or die, and so he surrendered momentarily, allowing us to talk with him. He explained that the ritual they were trying to do was to repair the veil between the prime plane and the abyss, and us do-gooders were always getting in the way, and it was our fault it fell in the first place. You know, of course, not taking any accountability for the fact that their plan included starving the people of a particular nation to try and take it over. You know, it's just like, they've been doing horrible things, all in the name of...
Details.
Yeah, all in the name of we'd be better off in charge than any of these other people. Taking that whole lawful thing to the evil extreme. And as Dove, done with this, and I just lit into him about how she's tired of people with power thinking they can do whatever they want to the lives of the people around them. She has really become radicalized in this campaign, and if she survives the final battle, it's likely she's going to make some powerful people very upset in the future of this world, if we end up saving it. In the end, he opted to attack us and forced us to take him out. You know, kind of, suicide by adventuring party. In the next session, which is when we were playing in person, yay, people! We continued exploring, and we found ourselves at the palace. Anu is the reincarnated soul of the first Tiefling Emperor, Zephyrathon, something along those lines. So the GM was basically giving her resurfacing memories as we traveled through the city. This, of course, confused Kai, who wasn't here in the early days of the campaign when we all discovered this. So we had to have a couple of conversations about, no, we told you about this. I know it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we would have mentioned this. Maybe you thought we were just being weird, but...
Didn't seem important at the time.
Yeah, it didn't seem important at the time. Yeah, sure, whatever. You're the reincarnated soul of some dead emperor. In the courtyard of the palace, we were suddenly attacked by an undead spirit of the last emperor. Anu is the soul of the first emperor. This was the last emperor. And it was this very cool and weird undead that had a head, 2 hands, and 2 eyes, that kind of operated as 3 separate entities, but when you destroyed one of the whole set, it took it all out. But then it also split into 4 versions of itself, so we had like 5 of them running around that we had to deal with. And as Dove, I got hit with a paralyzing fear spell as combat started, so I spent the first 3 rounds doing nothing. Now, I had been using my special metal dice because it's D&D in person. We're face-to-face. I get to use my shiny math rocks. But on the 3rd round, I finally was like, screw it, and I reached into my dice bag and drew out the pink sparkly die that has always been Dove's, and I rolled it for the save, and I got a nat 20. So, you know what that says to me. And on my next turn, when I actually got to do something, I just dropped Dove's version of a fireball, a frostball, on everything, including Anu and Ree, to take out the last remaining bits, because she was done. She was done with this stuff. We explored the remnants of the palace and we found some treasure. They had taken all the magic and stuff, but they left the gold. So this meant we got like an obscene amount of gold that we just shoveled into Anu's portable hole. As we kind of left behind the palace, we ended up seeing a plume of smoke indicating a campfire. So we went over there and see what was going on, and we found a group of tiefling adventurers. Anu snuck close and listened in for a while mentally connected to the rest of the party while she was sharing what she heard. Apparently, this group had come with the wizards, but they weren't part of the cult. They had been hoping to fix the rift between the planes, and they were starting to lose faith in the wizards because nothing they were doing seemed to do anything. It was also revealed that they had the emissary with them who had turned away from Asmodeus to become a paladin of Pelor instead. He's somebody from way back in the campaign who started as an enemy, but basically started coming around when he realized that Anu, who should be this, like, willingly choosing to give herself to Asmodeus, was like, oh, hell no. So he slowly came around, and now he's become a paladin of Pelor. How did that happen? That was when we revealed ourselves, and there were some tense moments as we tried to, figure out a way to have a conversation without murdering each other. In the end, conversation happened. Some of them aren't happy with us because we killed one of their friends at the gate, and, maybe not all the wizards were bad. Whatever. It's a war. We're dealing with things here. Anyway, we talked with them, and they knew where the Black Vault was. It was in the ziggurat in the center of the old city. And they had sent scouts that way, but those scouts hadn't returned. So we all agreed to head there to see what happened to the scouts. We found the doors to the ziggurat open, but pure blacklist beyond. Oh, I should also note, on top of the ziggurat was the skull of an ancient blue dragon that the original King Tuatha had killed and basically earned the right to be king. This is important. Because as we opened the ziggurat, King Tuath was sitting there on a throne. He's clearly based on Babylonian myths and stories. And as we talked to him, we very quickly realized he is the vampire. Not a vampire, but the vampire, the original. He took offense at the idea that his vampiric progeny were living out in the world, uncontrolled. And he offered to make a deal with us. He would allow us to access the Black Vault, provided we allow him to walk free, so he could once again see the world and rid the world of his progeny. And we weren't sure we could take him, and we were pretty sure he was being honest with us, so we ended up allowing it. The GM did end up telling us that we maybe could have taken him. He's like, some of you probably would have fallen in the fight, at least, dropped to 0 hit points type of thing, but he probably could have taken him. But it was still very like, oh, I don't know that we can do this one. I have a feeling the characters are going to come to regret that decision in the future of this campaign world. If the GM chooses to run another campaign advanced 20 years in the future like he's always done. Anyway, we entered the Black Vault. We found the Lightbringer's blade, along with some other terrifying objects. We're pretty sure the weird book was the Book of Vile Darkness, and there was definitely a sphere of annihilation there in the corner. We left those alone. Like, I kept Anu away from the Book of Vile Darkness. But we did take a dwarven weapon with us that's some sort of dwarven relic that should urge them to rebuild their empire. All cool setting stuff. Anyway, the rest of the session was us sending and doing dream communication to check in with our allies around the world, and things are getting rough out there. I'm not going to go into details, but time is running out, and we need to get this whole thing dealt with. Dun, dun, dun.
I love that, like, both of us have played D&D for decades, and yet Time Stop is still one of those things that's like, it's that thing from the D&D movie.
Yeah, it was like, the Archmage cast Time Stop, and I'm like, what? What? Wow! We actually got that! That is so cool!
I actually got to run something for once this time of year, so that was nice. We started our Curse of Strahd game with a round of dreams because all the PCs laid down for a long rest at the end of the last session. Our new Bard was blissfully free of any dreams, mainly because she got a pretty good spotlight at the end of our last session. So we didn't necessarily need to go further into her backstory or reveal anything else after all of her own reveals that last time. Our Elf Cleric got to meet her new deity for the first time face to face while she was in trance. And Hecate showed up and basically told her that all of these altars to this Mother Knight that are all over Barovia, those really should be altars to me, because who's a better Mother Knight than the goddess of the moon and witchcraft? So she has a new goal that she has to accomplish here. Te is a much better deity for her than Corellon was, because she is too much of a troublemaker to have kept up with her previous religion. But every time I had Hecate say something else, I had her shift from like maiden form to mother to crone whenever she would have something specific to say that looked more relevant to one or the other, so that was a lot of fun. Our bugbear monk, who has the barbarian chieftain haunting her spear, last time she had a dream with him, he told her to like murder all of the barbarians that like think that she's their leader now. And she thought this was just because we're in Barovia, and of course this guy's a serial killer. Great, I have a serial killer in my spear. In her dream, he proceeded to explain that basically most of the people that are still around from the Turg tribes that lived in this valley before are the people that turned on the other tribes members and sided with Strahd to help, kill off their own people. And that's why he wants them all murdered. I'm not saying it's a good idea to kill like their great-great-grandchildren, but apparently just explaining that much to the bugbear had her start thinking, maybe I should start killing them.
I mean, the sins of the father and all that isn't really a good excuse for murder.
No. Our Dampier wizard, she had a dream of the lab accident that almost killed her, where her mother used an experimental spell and she got to actually see her mother used her own blood to create that life-giving potion that she used to bring her back, which is why she's a Dampier. She's not, descended from an actual vampire, but because of the blood bringing her back from the brink of dying, that's why she ended up being a Dampier. The funny thing is you mentioned the Sphere of Annihilation, but part of the lab accident that I was describing was their master was creating a Sphere of Annihilation by sucking all of the essence out of the apprentices, and she barely got out of the room. So I just thought that was kind of funny that came up at the same time I had that in my notes here. And then our haunted sorcerer, who is the one that has the specter for a familiar, her dream was basically getting a last chance to talk to the old servant that her father killed and bound to her to be her bodyguard, which is her previous familiar. So he wanted to tell her how proud he was of her, even though he didn't choose to be bound to her. He was very proud of her now that she was an adult, and he was proud to see her rising above the mistakes that her father made. So we got to have that kind of like heartfelt goodbye there as she embraced Nixie being her new Spectre familiar. So one of the things I've been wanting to do with those dreams is when they finally get around to long rests, every so often, Curse of Strahd feels a little more like D&D than it does a horror campaign. And that's fine, but dreams are a great time to remind people this is a gothic horror setting. So it's a good time to throw some of this creepy, unknown, why is this happening kind of stuff back into the player's thought process when they do kind of go, well, we need to visit this town to finish this job, that starts feeling more like traditional D&D. Yes, it's traditional D&D, but also this other stuff is really still going on. So the PCs were heading back to Vallaki, but before they reached their destination, they rolled a random encounter, and it was a group of those same barbarians that think that the bugbear is going to lead them out of the mist because she has the black goat's pelt. And these barbarians had killed a wagon load of Barovian commoners that were just transporting goods from one place to another. So she decided, between the dream and seeing this, we are going to follow this trail of blood into the forest and take care of them.
Oh, boy.
They followed them into the forest. They found them in a clearing. I thought they were just going to, surprise them and then take them out. Bugbear decides, I want to turn this into an object lesson where I'm going to force him to fight me, their leader, one-on-one, to fight me, to prove whether he's worthy. And then when he's not worthy, we'll tell the rest of them that they're all going to die because they're not worthy to follow me. This turned into the Berserker leader actually dropped her to 0.
Oh, no.
There was some good dice rolls on my part and bad ones on her part. As Brennan Lee Mulligan likes to say, the dice tell their own story. But it was hilarious because once she got back on her feet, she was trying to change the terms of this thing where it's, that was good. You faced the first test. Now the next test is you have to fight all of my friends.
Oh, honey.
At which point, that guy kind of thought, I don't know if she's really supposed to be leading us out of the mist, but if I kill her when no one else is looking except for my group of guys and I start wearing the pelt, everyone's going to listen to me. At which point, the fight started back up again. He ended up not surviving once it turned into a regular fight. Most of the other barbarians ran off into the woods, and the bugbear decided, after her plan not working quite the way she wanted it to before, we'll let the ones that ran away escape. It was funny, too, because everybody started giving, this is my daughter's character, they started giving her crap because when she got the black goat's pelt, that was like her side mission that she got because she claimed the spear. And when they went on the side mission, the black goat headbutted her and knocked her off the mountain and dropped her to 0 hit points. So they're like, every time we go on a side quest, because of you, you drop before anyone else. They did eventually get to Vallaki, and they found out that a lot of things have changed since they were here last. The Burgermeister that was trying to constantly have festivals and tell people all will be well, and if we just think happy thoughts, maybe Strahd will go away, that guy's not in charge anymore. There were some incidents at the last festival, and the woman in town that is like the loyalist to Strahd and is also the head of a cult that worships devils has taken over the town. The man that they killed last time, and when they killed him, they skedaddled out of town really fast. He was the big man that had the grafted devil arm. He's around now again, obviously undead, but he is patrolling the streets. So they ducked into the inn as soon as they got into town so as not to draw his attention. They don't know how much he's actually going to remember between being dead and coming back again. And when they ducked into the inn, they find out that it is also under new management. This used to be run by members of the Wereraven family that are people that you can touch base with and will help you in Barovia. That's not who's running the inn any longer. So next time around, we're going to pick up with that and see how the inn has changed, seeing how Vallaki has changed, and see what they are going to do to finish up the tasks that they have here in this town. And I did want to call out some of the changes in town to the Blue Water Inn changing to the Sanguine Inn came from DM Andy's Patreon, which is where I got a bunch of the maps here. And there's some neat little side things that expand Curse of Strahd in a few places. And I thought that would be a good one to do that switch to show that something has happened while they've been gone a couple weeks.
And I think that's a very cool thing is to, while the PCs are off adventuring, things may not be staying the same at home.
Oh, yeah.
In City of Cowls, I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but we found that the devils have taken over the city of Indus and are defending it from the demons, but they're being just as harsh on the residents as just not as chaotic as the demons were. And on top of that, at least one of our allies is dead. Actually, two of our allies are dead if you count the awakened tree. we saved Franz from dying in a gutter just because Modron was having that dream with him and the GM allowed him to channel some healing into him. It's just all this stuff. It's like the city is having some issues and the goddamn Ebon Cowl is back.
Hello, we've been doing this show long enough that I know how much that bothers you.
There was actually a point where I had a thought, because I'm watching Critical Role Season 4, and he said, you know, the Ebon Cowl is back, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, crap. Would Dove think of this? So I rolled a die and got like a 4. And I'm like, obviously frustrated, and everyone's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I have a thought about what's actually happening with the Ebon Cowl, but Dove isn't smart enough to think that. At which point, Anu's player, Chris, goes to me, he's like, well, Anu is smarter than Dove, and Ange is smarter than Chris. So would Anu think of it? And so we decided yes, and basically the thought is like, what if the cowl is the cowl? Like, it's not the person wearing it, it is the artifact itself that's the driving force. Anyway.
That does remind me, though, just as we were talking there, I was thinking we should probably put that in our future ideas bucket. Campaigns changing in the background while your players are doing something else.
Yeah, because I do have thoughts on that, especially when you're running a sandbox campaign. Ding!
Before we move on, our Eldritch Invocation. We have a Patreon now, so if you would like to help us do the show and provide some additional content for you, we would love it if you decided to join. We've got our own Discord, and we'll be releasing additional supplementary material, like our D&D 5e Ancestor Origin feats, and our Dagger Heart campaign frame Paragons of the Cosmos. You have the power! You can find us at patreon.com/THAC0WA.
Welcome to the Dungeon Master's Workshop.
Back in one of our early episodes, we talked about the tiers of play and how the game feels different playing at low levels compared to high levels. When we talked about the mid-levels, about 5th through 11th, we literally called them Heroes of the Realm. Let's break it down a little bit deeper and talk about why that tier seems to be the sweet spot in D&D and similar games. So why do we call it the sweet spot?
I think that's the range where you can more consistently challenge player characters. And no matter how much you want to be a big badass, you want to be challenged. It's the whole John McClane thing. You want to see John McClane win, but also John McClane is more of a badass because he got beat up and isn't wearing his shoes and walked on glass and everything else that happens to him in the course of resolving the situation.
I think it's the point where the characters really start feeling like heroes. Mm-hmm. They've got enough cool abilities and powers that they feel like a force to be reckoned with. It's also a fun tier for GMs because we can start pulling some of the bigger guns out of the monster manual without feeling like we're just going to wipe the players off the map.
Yeah, and I think that's also an interesting thing. Not only do they start getting some more survivability or I'm a badass abilities, they don't get lost in how many options they have when they do start getting those things.
Right. That transition from lower level to this mid tier is like it takes them out of squishy danger and into, oh, you're cool, you can do some cool stuff, but now you're facing bigger, badder threats. So how does the fiction we associate with D&D point to these levels specifically?
So I had some thoughts on traditional D&D books, but I think we should probably go back to the inspiration first. If you look at The Lord of the Rings, I think you see a range of characters, like the hobbits are your low-level characters, but really most of the Fellowship, like Gimli and Legolas and Boromir, I really see those as these guys that are in that tier 2.
Yeah.
They are experienced, they are competent, but they are not the biggest heroes of the world. And I'd probably say Aragorn is probably that guy that's at the edge, just about ready to go into tier 3.
I think there's a reason many earlier iterations on D&D in the 70s and 80s had no problem with multi-level party. because of Lord of the Rings, because it was very obvious the hobbits are noobs. You know, they're out here figuring stuff out as they go, whereas the other characters in the Fellowship obviously are skilled and experienced.
I also think it's interesting because you kind of see by the end of a character's career that they did have that middle range, even if they don't end up there, because you have like Fafford and Mauser, where most of the time they're getting in trouble with the Thieves Guild. They're having to leave town sometimes when they pull off a heist. But as they progress, they start doing these things like they're big enough heroes that death is going, okay, I have to kill 2 heroes. Let's pick these 2. And then, like, in the end, they literally are fighting 2 gods in one of the final stories that they're in.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's towards the end reminds you all that stuff before this was in the middle. It wasn't when they were these guys that are the only champions of Rhyme Isle. It was when they were these people that were competent enough to get themselves into trouble with everybody.
So what about the actual D&D fiction, like Dragonlance and Drizzt and all of that?
I think what's really interesting, especially like in 2nd edition, when you had a chance to see like some more books coming out that had these people statted up early on, most of these characters like Drizzt and all of the Heroes of the Lance and Alias from Azure Bonds, they got statted up in this 5th to 7th level range. I know it's hard to believe because at some point they decided, Drizzt has to be like 16th level. But like the first time he showed up in anything, it was just like he's a 5th level ranger.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his full stats, but it was just saying, yeah, he's a 5th level ranger.
Yeah.
He's competent. But yeah, really that was kind of the feel of a lot of the early novels too. It was like, we're showing you what average adventurers are like.
It was showing them doing things that were right in that sweet spot of 5th to 11th level. The doing things like with the monsters they were facing, the places they were exploring, the abilities they had. I think looking to a more modern example, The Legend of Vox Machina, which is based on Critical Role and their first campaign, I think they're all about that level when they start the animated series, because they start that with the group already functioning as an adventuring party with experiences under their belt. Compare that to the Mighty Nine, which is just releasing now, and they're covering them from the very beginning and their formation as a group rather than starting in media res, so to speak. So I think they're starting in that lower tier and building up to the big bad adventurers part of things.
I think you can almost even argue like with the Mighty Nine, especially in the animated series, it is almost like watching them get 3rd level and pick their subclasses. You know, it's that sort of like we're on the cusp of actually starting to do something a little bit more momentous here.
Yeah. If you're not watching it, it's good.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good.
I do want to throw out one anecdote here because I thought it was funny because it goes back to that whole thing with Drizzt and people starting to stat him like he was 16th level. Ari Salvatore even pointed this out. In 2nd edition, after the stats changed for White Dragons and Baelors and things like that, Drizzt had to look a lot more badass because you may not remember this, but White Dragons might have had like 50 some hit points at most when they were ancient, and Baelors were 7 + 7 hit dice. And Ari Salvatore said these things weren't that hard for him to kill. Like this wasn't like the epic level challenge that it became when they changed the stats for these things.
Yeah.
It was just something that was hard, but not necessarily like this earth-shattering epic level thing to do.
So what is it about the player characters that make them fun during this tier?
Fireball.
Yeah, Fireball. Absolutely Fireball.
I mean, honestly, when you are a caster the first time, you have one of those area effect things that can just like end an entire encounter. That is literally a game changer for you.
It's so glorious. It is so glorious. I love my AoE spells, and it's always, when you're at the lower levels, it's like, well, I can take this one, and like Burning Hands will do like this little 15-foot cone, and I get Shatter, which does this little 20-foot box. But Fireball!
Your worst problem with Fireball, especially when you first get it, is, are my friends in the blast radius? And the other thing I would say too, like it's not all fun and games just for the wizard. That's also the range where fighters get their second attack. That's one of those things where it's like, now you're not just swinging once and missing and going, oh, well, I got to wait till my next turn. Now you actually have that chance to, do something and then follow up.
Pretty much everyone gets something cool in 5th edition. All your pure casters get access to 3rd level spells, and all of them have something cool in there. I think, if I remember, Spirit Guardians is a 3rd level spell.
Oh, yeah.
And while it's not as well known as Fireball, it is a badass spell.
I was gonna say, the more clerics I see in my campaigns, the more I see.
Oh, yeah. It's I was sleeping on Spirit Guardians when 5th edition first came out. And then I played Baldur's Gate 3 and was like, oh, that's what this does. All of your martial classes, I think most of your martial classes get that second attack. I don't know about monks, but I think fighters, barbarians, paladins, and rangers all get a second attack at 5th level. Rogues, they get another die on their sneak attack damage, and they go from 2d6 to 3d6. Also, uncanny dodge.
Yeah.
So it's like everyone gets something cool at 5th level. I think every version of modern D&D and D&D style games start giving them these really cool things starting at 5th level.
The other thing that I think is fun, like even from the player standpoint, when the player would say, I want this completely earth-shattering ability to do something, sometimes you really don't. And I like the fact that the stuff you're getting in this range is more about problem solving. Teleport is something that just, says overland travel isn't going to happen. You don't have a time crunch anymore. You can be there instantaneously. Dimension Door is just a problem solving spell. You're not going to subvert too much. You're going to subvert something in the moment, but you're not cutting out whole swaths of the adventure and not experiencing it.
Yeah. So what kind of adventures are fun to run for GMs during this tier?
I think it's really interesting to note that a lot of the 5e published adventures either start at this level or they had like the opening chapter that like speed runs you up to like 4th level so that you're almost in tier 2 by the time the actual body of the adventure starts.
It's almost like they do some of the adventures are they get you from 1st to 5th, and then you could switch to one of the ones that goes 5th and above, or they're 5th and above. Dragon Heist is 1st through 5th, and then 5th level, I don't know why these two are connected. They have absolutely nothing to do with each other, but people assume that Dungeon of the Mad Mage is the sequel to Dragon Heist.
Not really. You just happen to be in Waterdeep, I guess.
And they happen to be published around, around the same time. You're in Waterdeep. You can easily jump from under. They're very, very different campaigns.
But yeah, I mean, most of the starter sets do that where they get you to 4th or 5th level. Like they've done several starter sets now, and a lot of them just, and that feel is kind of like, we're going to get you through a starter set and then you're going to play through a real adventure.
Yeah, I think Dragon of Icespire Peaks, which is the one that I have run, basically has you for the first 3 adventures. You just give them a level. They do the first adventure, they're now 2nd level. They do the next adventure, they're now 3rd level. They, and like once they get to 3rd level, okay, now you need to do 2 adventures before you get the next level. But it's definitely speed running you through those lower levels so you can get to the cool stuff.
I do think it's funny though. Curse of Strahd does speed run you up to, getting closer to tier 2, but it does so in Death House, which is an insanely difficult thing to throw 1st level characters into. It's like, okay, if they get to the attic, let them be 2nd level. Like, if they get to the attic. But yeah, I mean, this is where you can start throwing out the more classical monsters. Like you can throw a giant at PCs once they're in this tier. You can throw, chimeras and basilisks. And the basilisks isn't just because they're harder to fight. It's because if somebody turns to stone, you might have the resources to turn them back. That's kind of the feeling that now, the term we have used before, you can start bringing out the good china.
I mean, ogres and trolls are now grunts.
Yeah.
Which is a terrifying thing when you last fought them at 2nd level and it could have killed your entire party.
Also, you can start throwing dragons at them that aren't so young that it's embarrassing if the PCs take pride in killing them.
No, I'm not killing dragon babies.
A juvenile dragon is old enough to actually be a jerk, so that's okay.
Like I said, you can turn the things that were a problem in lower levels, you can turn them into kind of the minions and the grunts. It's like, and you could throw a horde of little monsters at them and not have to worry about it, and still like maintain some of that continuity from the lower levels going forward. But now they get to feel really powerful as they take out that horde of small, annoying monsters.
But what I like, though, and this is definitely something in 5th edition's favor, because of the bounded accuracy thing, back in the Pathfinder days, by the time you were getting up to 5th level, you were already getting to the point to where those one-hit dice goblins and kobolds were not going to even have a chance to hit you. That's not true in 5th edition.
Oh, yeah.
If you fight 20 goblins, one of them is going to hit you.
Yeah.
Probably more than that, because you don't have these ridiculously high armor class ratings already at that level.
There's a reason we always said Selena's 25 AC was Pathfinder AC instead of D&D AC. So why don't lower levels get the same love from the players?
One of the problems is, even if you throw something essentially level appropriate at first level characters, if it crits, it's going to level someone the first time it hits the player.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been at Victoriana 5th edition, obviously based on 5th edition. In the fights I have run for those players, I've taken out a player in each of those fights because the monsters do as much damage as they have hit points. So it's like, it hasn't been a problem because there's not so many monsters that all of there's not going to be a TPK spiral, but it is still like a couple of people are going down in this fight before the monster is dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When you hit tier 2, if your fighter goes down that was going toe-to-toe with this monster, your rogue might be able to tank for a round while the cleric gets them back on their feet. That's not happening when they're 1st or 2nd level.
No. And I think depending upon how the GM is running the game, it can sometimes feel like a slog to get from 1st level to the cool stuff. As we said, most of the adventures, the published adventures, say, do this adventure, then level. They're not doing the accounting of figuring out this is how much XP you need to get from 1st to get to 2nd level, and therefore forcing the GM to run people through that many that many monsters and encounters to get that level. It's just saying, do this one adventure, let them level. Because if you do try and do we're going to do this according to the rules, and you're only going to level when you get to 1,000 XP, that can start to feel like a slog. No one wants to spend 6 sessions at 1st level. It can start to feel like a really long slog if that's how long it's taking to get to the cool stuff.
I do, and honestly, we could probably do an in defense of low level episode too, but I like people to start at lower levels, but also I don't like them to have to live there for that long.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost like just having you have the feel for the fact that I am fragile. I have some things that I can do that I'm good at, but I'm still fragile. But we made it through our very first night of adventuring. Now I'm 2nd level. I can at least take a hit, get through another adventure. Now I'm 3rd level. I don't mind leveling quickly through those levels, but I think there is some value to having them. But yeah, you don't want to force people to live in that zone for too long.
I remember basically pushing you to start us at 3rd level for the Marodi campaign, mostly because my concept for Kazina required subclass. I'm like, yeah, I know I can plan on that, but I need those abilities. I need that.
And what's interesting too is like when the 2024 rules came out, they actually kind of talk about how 1st level is your default, but 3rd level is actually okay to lean back on for your starting position too, because that's when you're getting your subclass. So even there, it's kind of like loosening up this idea that maybe 3rd level is where you start most of the time, but you can still do first level.
I think it really depends on who are your players, how experienced are they with the game system. Is there going to be value in walking through those lower levels through gameplay with them? I started the old Margrave game at first level because I wanted to experience Tales of the Valiant from first level onward. Normally, I always start at third level or around there.
And the interesting thing was, in the Marodi campaign, you were going to be recruited as agents right off the bat. So it made more sense for you to be competent enough that you would have gotten someone's attention.
Yeah.
I do think in our Thrones and Bones game, I think it's been great to have all of you start at first level, because it has been kind of neat seeing all of you grow slowly into the characters that you are and experience the setting the way you have, because it's really, we've been exploring the setting and also the Tales of the Valiant rules at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was definitely something where it was good to start off at first level. But then again, you got a level right after the first session that we played.
Yes. Yep. We got a level after each adventure, which is kind of how you do those lower levels. What makes the higher levels harder for GMs? And I will note, I pointed out that the lower levels are a problem for players, but it's the higher levels that are a problem for the GMs.
It is funny, though, because you said it's a problem for players, but I still feel bad if I'm like, okay, I'm just going to have them fight this one orc, and then the orc with its great axe gets that critical hit, and it's like, oh no. This shouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah. It's easier for a GM because you know that, like, yes, there is that chance that squishy first level character could have a really bad day, but it's relatively easy for us to pull together what we need to run a first level game.
Tier 1 is the only time the whole, if you drop to negative double your hit points, you die instantly, is really a threat to you.
Yeah, really a threat.
Which brings me to my first thing about why higher levels are difficult. I don't want to kill PCs, but sometimes PCs at that level and players get that feeling like I can't die.
Yeah.
And there's a difference to me about whether I am going to try to kill you or whether you think that no matter what I do, I can't kill you. Because that shifts that paradigm a little bit. It makes it harder to make. I don't want to use immersion too flippantly here, but it does kind of break the immersion a little bit when you do start this idea of like, I can't die. Even if I die, I'm going to raise, that it does start to undercut that idea that there are stakes.
I believe we talked about this a little bit in the episode we did on the tiers of play, because when you switch from that heroic mid-level tier to the epic level tier, which is 12th level and above, you have to change the style of game you're running, because the things that were a threat and a danger to the player characters aren't as big of a deal anymore. And you have to start making the threats something more epic, more colossal. In the City of Cowls game, it's a goddamn war between the Abyss and the Prime Plane. That's like, you couldn't have told second level Dove that that's what she was going to be dealing with in 8 months. But here we are.
And the in the Marodi game, like, you're dealing with basically war between multiple nations at this point in time. It's not just a matter of we're doing this mission that's going to be important. It's, wow, this thing could actually realign how countries are in this part of the world now.
And as a GM, it can be a little bit of a system shock to realize that as your players start getting into those higher levels, that like, oh no, I'm out of my element with running this campaign now, because this is going places I did not expect it to. And that's not even getting into the how hard it is to craft a challenging encounter for characters at those levels. Now, I'm not saying that players never have a problem in the epic level tiers, because there are players who get overwhelmed with the number of choices they have. But I think more players are just like, look at all the cool stuff I can do. oh my God, like they're goblins with their shiny math rocks. It's like, and all the things they can do. And they really want to do those things. But as a GM, it's like, oh my God, what am I doing? How am I going to get through this when I have to give all this stuff? There's a reason the GM of the City of Cows game was really struggling getting his footing back under him when we were coming into this conclusion of the campaign, because there's a lot that we can do that can just circumvent the types of things he can put in front of us. Like when we had the, leave the Dragonborn Empire remnants behind to head across the sea, and the GM planned on a sea voyage as what we were going to be doing in that session. And Modrin was like, we could just gate over there. And I'm like, no, we are not.
Yeah.
Because the GM prepared for us to get on a boat and go across the sea, because that's what we told him we were going to do. It's like, we are not going to gate over there, even if those are your abilities. I understand those are your abilities, and I am metagaming here, but I am doing it to protect the sanity of the GM, because I know he's planned some cool stuff for us out on that scary blood-red sea.
And it is funny because teleportation is another one of those kind of milestone abilities, but it's a different kind of milestone, because the first time you say, hey, we can get to the city on the other side of the continent in a minute now. And you do it that time, and it's a rush. And then after that, it's like, hey, we never have to worry about overland travel ever again. And as much as I have said divinations do not necessarily ruin everything, there does come a point, especially higher level divinations, where it does start to get a little harder. Because this is my trade-off is, once your PCs can start talking to gods, like doing divinations where they're actually talking to extraplanar things, if you're being obtuse and not giving them information, you're being a jerk.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to start giving them access to more information when they can do those things.
In some, like the only campaign I've ever played in where I got to 20th level, in some ways the GM treated those last 5 levels almost the same way we treat the first 5 levels. As in, we're going to get through these as quick as we can to get to the cool stuff. Because she, at that point, there were reasons she wanted to wrap up the campaign, but it was, we need to wrap it up, but I want to get my players to 20th level so they can have the full firepower to take on Tiamat. And that's what she did. So those last few levels where we did like one adventure and went from 15th to 16th, 17th to 18th, so on and so forth, until she's like, okay, level up to 20th. Next session is the Well of Souls or whatever it's called. Because it was at that point, it was just so exhausting for her to try and prep for the game. It's like, let's get this done. Let's still do it while it's still enjoyable for all of us. But I'm going to let them be 20th level so they at least have one session where they have all the firepower. So, do other fantasy RPGs have a similar progression and sweet spot?
The funny thing is, when I was thinking about this question, the first two that jumped into my mind are fantasy adjacent, I would say. When I was playing Death Watch, which is the 40K Space Marine version of that, they had this thing where, like, if you got all the way through certain talents and career paths, you opened up, like, this ultra tier of things where all of a sudden you can do things, and you're already, like, Space Marines are already ridiculously more powerful than anyone else in the setting, but all of a sudden it's like this whole, you are almost on the level of the Primarchs, where you get these things where it's, if I die, I am going to sleep for 5 minutes and then I will be back. And also the other thing that did this is the Fantasy Flight Star Wars, especially when Force and Destiny came out. If you completed some of the Force-sensitive talent trees, they opened up these bigger, they were smaller talent trees, but everything in that talent tree was way more powerful than the stuff that was on the regular career path talent tree.
I know when I was preparing to run Electric State for Free League, not a fantasy game at all, I was very underwhelmed with the abilities of the starting characters. So when I created the characters for the convention one-shot I was going to run, I gave them, like, I think 3 advances just to give them what I felt would be fun abilities for convention play. And I was just like, I made the first level, starting level characters, and I'm like, ugh, they're not very good at anything at all, especially knowing the dice mechanics in those Year Zero engine games.
I have fun playing them, but man, sometimes it's like the odds are so against me, even rolling 12 dice.
Yeah. And like in Electric State, they have no skills, they just have their abilities, and then like specialties or tools. And I'm like, oh, that means like the talented people are rolling 5 dice looking for a 6. And I'm like, oh, that's not, I don't like that at all.
That's painful.
Yeah.
The other thought that I had, which is more fantasy driven depending on what books you're using with it, but tromping on your area of expertise a little bit more, when I was running one-shots of Savage Worlds, that first tier was kind of rough.
Yeah.
There were certain one-shots that I would put together that I thought, oh, it's Savage Worlds, they can probably handle most of the stuff. It's not level-based, and it's like, no, if they don't have some of those seasoned edges that give them a little bit more oomph, there are some things that are going to knock them on their butts all the time.
I'm not sure if I've talked about my Horizon Zero Dawn Savage Worlds game on this podcast. I put together a Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West Savage Worlds game to run at conventions, and I very purposefully made those characters seasoned because, one, they were being called to do a thing by the leaders of their various groups, so they needed to be at least talented and powerful enough to get the attention of their leaders. But also, it's like, well, that gives them enough of the stuff to make them feel like they're competent and useful and can do cool stuff. And this isn't to say, like, novice characters in Savage Worlds are useless, because Savage Worlds is it's got some properties to it that make it a lot of fun to play when you may not be talented in a thing, because you are always going to be rolling a d6 and the die that you roll for whatever the skill is. And your goal is to get a 4. Now, if you're rolling something untrained, you're rolling a d4 minus 2 plus your wild die, which is also going to be minus 2. But that d4, when you hit a 4 on a d4, because most people are going, well, d4 minus 2 and I need a 4, I'm never going to get a success. But your dice explode. You get the max number on a die and you get to roll it again, and you keep doing that until it stops getting the max number on the die. And I have gotten 24 on an unskilled check before because that d4 just kept rolling 4s. Yes, they're more squishy because they don't have as many abilities, but I think low-level Savage Worlds is a little different from low-level D&D.
It is, but I do also feel that there is that similar sweet spot of seasoned doesn't feel ridiculous, but it does feel more competent.
Right.
So I think it does have that sweet spot. I did specifically run a fantasy campaign with Savage Worlds because I was using the Hellfrost setting, and thankfully the newer editions of Savage Worlds deal with this, but those exploding dice took out a dragon that should have had them terrified, so that was interesting.
Yeah. I'm still like, this is totally off topic to a D&D podcast, but in the Supers game I've been running, when the asphalt monster burst through the side of the building and the player with the laser blast out of his fist hit it, and he's like, "Oh, I did 32 damage." And I'm like, "Oh, it's shaken." All the players were terrified and they immediately ran away. Because what that means, for those of you that don't know Savage Worlds, is when you are shaken, it means you hit their parry, but you didn't do enough to wound them, and you have to get 4 over their parry to wound them.
You stunned them a little bit.
Yeah. That still made me so happy.
The other sad thing about that campaign was that they didn't pick up on the fact that the zombies with the glowing runes on them exploded, and they got really close to all of the zombies, and then someone used a firebolt on one of them, and there was a chain reaction, and I had 2 characters left of all of my player characters by the end of that encounter.
Oopsies! So is it viable to run a campaign for just 5th through 11th level?
honestly, if you look at a lot of the published adventures, they are almost that. Like a lot of they might be a little bit more like I think Storm King's Thunder is like 4th through that, but I mean they really do, like most of them don't do much beyond 10th or 11th level. They really are kind of modeling that idea that is where most of a campaign takes place.
Yeah.
Personally, I do still like to, even if I am going to start people higher level myself, if I'm not using a published thing, I do like to start at 3rd because you have your subclass, but it's just like you've just now entered that realm of having your specialized abilities.
Yeah. When I was first running D&D style campaigns, I ran the Pathfinder game and I let them start at 5th level, but we did a flashback to 1st level type of thing. And nowadays, I think I tend to prefer starting at 3rd level. I started the Depths of Zendrick campaign at 3rd level. When I ran Dragon Heist, that started at 1st level, but I had them start at 1st level. The Old Margrave, I've had them start at 1st level. So you can absolutely run a campaign for just 5th through 11th, but I think you can lose something, especially if your players are not as up to date on the rules and all the mechanics as you are. They may struggle a little bit starting right out of the gate at 5th level.
Yeah, I think it's almost the way this just occurred to me is like starting them at 3rd level, they have to sweat a little bit before they hit that sweet spot. Not long, but a little bit. And it is almost to me like the pilot of a new TV series. Like, here's the first episode, so we're really going to put you through your paces. After this, you can settle into more of a routine. Yeah,
and especially with 5th edition, because by 3rd level, all classes have their subclass. The subclass is really when you start adding that flavor to the characters, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can pull from this level range into either lower levels or higher levels to preserve some of the best of this sweet spot?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can do with lower level characters is let them use consumables, because then it's not like you're giving them a permanent power boost, but you are giving them those options where they can pull the trigger and do something beyond their normal capabilities. And they get a taste of that idea that, like, hey, if we hang on for a little bit, we'll be able to do this. Giving them that scroll of fireball as an emergency, get out of bad encounter free, it's fine because you gave them a scroll of fireball. You know they're going to use it. You don't have to give them another one. It's fine.
I do think it's important, depending upon the type of game you're running. If you are running the type of game like a Dungeon and Crawl Classics funnel, where you're taking a bunch of nothing commoners and seeing who comes out on the other end, Godspeed. Do you. But for most of us, I think, let those 1st level characters, let those lower tier characters still feel like they're cool. Because even at 1st level, they are stepping up to do something no one else is willing to do. So let them feel cool. And this can come into play through your descriptions of things, the reactions of the NPCs. Let them have those really cool moments, even though they are lower tier characters. They're trying to be adventurers. Let them get on the path to be adventurers.
You know what one of the best consumables you can give people in tier 1 is?
What?
Scroll of Revivify. Give them a Scroll of Revivify, and then they aren't quite as afraid that that thing is going to crit them. And if nothing else, it gives them personal, like, we have this insurance policy. We're okay.
Yeah. What about for the higher levels?
One of the things I hate in actual published adventures that are for higher levels is when it's like, this fortress negates all of this cool stuff that they got for being 12th level or higher. It's like, no, no. Like, they got to that level, they should be able to use these things. If you can't write the adventure, then don't write a 12th level or higher adventure then.
Yeah.
That said, I do think that's something you can sit down in a session 0, or if you revisit every tier like we kind of did there in the Marodi campaign, before someone gets those higher level abilities, before they start getting the teleport and the raised dead and everything, have a talk with everyone about what don't we want to see.
Right.
what would be okay not to use. And that gives you a little bit more of that feeling like we are intentionally all as a group deciding we kind of don't want to have this part of the higher level experience.
And it is important that you as the GM remember that you are part of this conversation as well. If you really don't want to deal with teleportation and gate and fast travel, talk to your players about it. Let them know, I really don't want to have this be an aspect of the game. Be upfront with your players about that, because your fun is also important to the game. I am not saying this for you to lord it over the players and deny them their cool stuff. But if there is an aspect of higher level play that you are struggling with, or you're going to struggle with, talk to the players. Let them know, hey, this is an issue I'm having. I'd like to avoid it in this campaign. I also think in higher levels, keep the relationships to the world as something that is important to the characters, because it can be very easy to start spinning off into epic level adventures and lose track of who the characters are, what they care about, and why they are adventurers.
Hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invoke our comic book reference for the episode here. That's the thing that so many people miss about Superman stories.
Mm-hmm.
When they say it's too hard to tell Superman stories, you know what Superman stories should be about? His relationship to Ma and Pa Kent and Lois and Jimmy and other normal human beings. That's what makes Superman interesting, not the fact that he could move the moon if he wanted to.
Yeah. And this isn't saying to fridge those characters.
No.
Don't fridge those characters, but that's what makes Superman cool. Also, that could lead into a whole conversation about the player of Superman being wise enough to hold space for other players to do cool things with their super. Yes, he allows Batman to be really cool. But basically, the player understands that the important thing about the character is not that he can do these massive, huge things. It's that he cares about this blue marble in space that became his home.
Now let's join Ange and Jared for some downtime research, where they do the work so we don't have to.
Every episode, we're going to look for something related to D&D that we want to pass along to the listeners. It might be products, websites, videos, or podcasts, but it will always be something that we think will enhance your D&D experience.
Okay, I found out about this a little too late, and it's probably I don't know, I'm telling you about an advent calendar in an episode that's going to drop in the middle of December, but I still think it's really cool. Black Oak Workshop adventure calendars. I love Black Oak's dice already.
Yep.
And these advent calendars give you a full set of dice that you can open up throughout the month leading up to Christmas. They have a ton of variety of different themes and styles, and they're not cheap, but they're still really cool. And, they're definitely worth taking a look at if you like dice and you like advent calendars. And I love that they did the pun of it's an adventure calendar.
At GameholeCon, I got a bunch of the black and white skull ones. And when I say a bunch, I mean I got the basic set and also, okay, how many D6s do I need for this spell? How many D10s do I need for this one? And those, those sit next to me. Those are my GM dice for my Curse of Strahd game.
Yeah, I have a set of orange cat dice and a set of dark purple cat dice.
So I wanted to talk to something that, again, might be a little bit too late. You might have a couple days to back this by the time you hear about it, but I feel better about this because I've noticed that things that are on backer kit instead of just on Kickstarter usually do kind of roll over into a pre-order situation as soon as the funding stops. So I'm going to assume that's going to happen here, and I will pass this along. The Twilight Sword RPG by Two Little Mice, which is going to be published by Free League, is currently on backer kit, and Twilight Sword is basically a Legend of Zelda early Final Fantasy type game where it's really evoking those things. The artwork looks so much like that. I mean, some of it looks like Breath of the Wild. There is literally a character type that looks exactly like a character type from Final Fantasy, and I am okay with that. The core campaign, funding campaign, is going to have a core rulebook, the Lands of Radia, There's going to be a starter set, GM screen, dice, tokens, spell cards, monster cards, and like a card chest that holds all the stuff. And when you open it, you have to go dee 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 dee. They also look like they are focusing on alchemy as their VTT of choice for this. That's the only VTT they have listed, but that kind of doesn't surprise me because I see it. Free League seems to be really enamored of alchemy because they have like all of their stuff on there. They have some of their stuff on other things, but they have like all of their stuff on alchemy. So that's, you have a chance to look at that if you want to. But if you have any free rupees left after buying holiday gifts, you can send them to BackerKit if you're interested, and we'll have a link in the show notes.
We are happily part of the Polygamers Podcast Network, helping you run and play your best games. We think you'll enjoy another Polygamers podcast like
Scritches from Misdirected Mark Plays. Scritches is crime, comedy, and drama. An actual play about 3 unlikely investigators looking into their friend's murder. It's like Chinatown and Zootopia got together and had a podcast, which you can listen to anywhere.
We've used up all of our resources, so I think it's time for a long rest. I hope this adventure was rewarding for you, and we hope you go exploring with us when we start our next adventure, which will be after the new year at this point in time. I hope everyone has a great holiday, and I hope you have a wonderful 2026.
Happy New Year!